Hello, salut, buongiorno, and welcome to another episode of the Traveler's Haven podcast series, where we will be looking at all things true travel professionals need and need to hear. Once again, I'm Sam, and I'll be your host. Today, I have a special guest that has generously agreed to help us understand more about the ways we do safe rentals. Let me introduce the co founder and CEO of Openroom, Weiting Bollu. Hello.
Well, hi, Sam, and hi, everybody listening.
Wei Ting's entrepreneurial journey began with a costly lesson in rental property management, where she experienced losses exceeding $35,000 due to non paying tenants. Determined to prevent others from facing similar challenges, she built Openroom to pave a future towards a transparent and connected rental ecosystem. With over 30,000 users monthly and more than 2 million searches on their core order search engine, Openroom is improving the rental landscape every single day. So I brought you on for this interview, have a couple questions for you, and answer as you see fit.
That sounds great, Sam. I'm ready to go. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, as a small business, I'm always ready to share learnings and insights because everybody needs to learn more and be more educated. Knowledge is power. Let's get into it.
So true. Okay, awesome. All right, first question. So I've read a bit about your story and the near 2 year dispute that you went through, but would you mind sharing it in full with my listeners?
Yes. It was 2021 when I had asked my tenants, I'm ready to move back into my property because I'm going to be growing my family. I was pregnant and requested very nicely. And in Ontario, you'd have to give a what's called an N12 form for personal use. And then you have to give compensation and way advanced notice. So I had done that. And my tenants at the time had honestly just told me, it's like, Sam, I'm not moving out and I'm also just not going to pay rent anymore. And I sat here and I was like, I did not even know that that was possible. Like, what? What?
Yeah,
Wait, what?
that sounds crazy.
Yeah. And so then that's where the near 2 year dispute came in because we had gone back and forth at the landlord and tenant board, which is what it's called, the LTB here in Ontario. And then when we came out of these court disputes or tribunal disputes, you come out with orders, these decisions, court orders that are specifying what happened during the dispute and the rental debt that is owing on that. And mind you, this is all public documents. So it's not like Openroom aggregates all of these and then it's just like a slander. It is public available documents. So we aggregate all of these. And then I was like, well, I have these court orders. Why don't I share it with the public? So then that's when we decided, you know what, we're going to crowdsource it, get other people who have gone to court, share their tenancy dispute court orders with us, and then we make it publicly searchable for everybody. So it started with my dispute court orders, and then now we have thousands and thousands of people sharing it with us so that everybody in the rental ecosystem benefits.
Okay, that's awesome. So everyone gets to understand each other's problems and then learn off of it.
Yeah, only when it gets really bad. Like you only go to court when you can't mediate or negotiate certain things, all right? Because you don't
Okay.
actually want to go to court. Going to court is not just a financial decision. Yes, there's unpaid rent, for example, as one of the dispute situations, but then there's a whole slew of other issues that come up such as like mental distress, emotional distress, physical distress as we have gone we as we go through these disputes. It is not fun and I would not recommend anybody to want to go to the LTB. Like no one wants to go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's probably pretty timely and pretty stressful. It sounds not
Yeah.
fun at all.
No, it is not fun at all, especially because as a renter, you have your specialty. Like maybe you're a nurse, all right? That's your demographic of listeners, perhaps. And then on my side, it's like I in my past, run and I'm a proper product manager. So I build software for a living. So it's like rentals and legal stuff is not my expertise, but then now I have to spend time going and diving into how this works or hiring somebody. So I didn't want to do that. But then because I was so uninformed about the rental ecosystem, even though it was my personal property that I had rented out, I ended up diving really, really deep into the rental ecosystem and learning more about it so that I could now teach everybody. And now I run Open Room.
Awesome. Okay. Uh, so something that you advocate for on your website is that landlords are business owners and tenants are responsible customers. Could you elaborate a bit on what that means for their conduct and their practices?
Yes. For everybody that is listening, at Openroom, what we do is we aggregate court orders and then we make it searchable by the public. What does the use case look like? It would be if you are an individual that is renting out your home, you want to search an Openroom by name or address and see, okay, was this applicant or a future tenant, did they have any past disputes related to unpaid rent or evictions, and see what's the history, rental history like. And then from a renter perspective, you would search inside Openroom for, say, the landlord's name or the landlord's address to see what does your future landlord, potential landlord or housing provider, what was their history like? Do they take care of maintenance? Do they have a slew of bad faith evictions that they do? Get to know a little bit more about who you're going to be dealing with. Okay. So then when it comes to the landlords are business owners, what we mean by this is that rental itself is a business. It's a small business, and some people take it really, really big. But at the fundamentals of it, it's a business, and therefore you have cash flow, you have expenses, you have revenue, but you have to maintain your goods and services. All right. Like utilities, like maintenance. It's like you got to upkeep what you are offering to the tenants, who I say are the responsible customers, or who should be, meaning that tenants, in exchange for the goods and services, they pay. They have to give money or other forms of payment to be able to get the goods and services. Just like how you go to a grocery store, you buy the goods of the groceries and then you have to pay for it.
And you'd never want to buy like a rotten food. You never want to pay for something that is just no good. So it's totally the
Yes.
same.
Yes, yes. And in the sense, it's like, okay, so say, for example, there is the rotten tomato that you buy, right? At the end of it, you could mistakenly buy that, but you still pay for it. And then you got to go back to the grocery store and say, can I get a refund? So it's like you did pay for it and then you go and get a refund. So similar to the rental side is that you can't just choose not to pay rent. You would still have to pay rent, but then you can go back to the LTB, which is in essence the grocery store analogy, and say, all right, I would like a rent abatement, which is a rent reduction. All right. And you can argue in court for something like that, but you can't just choose not to pay rent.
Yeah, true.
Mhm.
All right. So, third question. So, what are the steps that a property owner should take to be safe in their renting?
Honestly, Sam, there is a slew of best practices for tenant or applicant screening. And on Openroom, we have a free resource, which is like 11 pages of best practices that other property managers and housing providers have shared with us as things that their checklist of things they go through. Okay. But I'll share three steps with everybody. It depends on if you're like long term or short term rental, but for the most part, I think that they should work. Number one is that you want to do a search inside public databases to see what is going on. So, for example, people will do an open room search as a preliminary because it's free to do an open room search on name and address. Just do a preliminary. And then, second, is what people will do is pull a credit history. So you can pull an Equifax or a TransUnion through different partners or even on those associated websites themselves. I think many platforms, it's like $30 or something to just pull a simple report. And ideally, you don't want to get it straight from the tenant or the applicant because there are so many fraudulent documents going out these days. Right. So you want it ready. And then when you pull these credit history, you can see the credit, the income, or the credit history, the score, the visas or Mastercards, any of their trade lines or collections or bankruptcies if there are any. So that's really important. And then the third tip that I would give is request for the second landlord in the past. So not the exact right now landlord that they're with, but the second. Because the current one, if it's not a good situation that is happening, then this current landlord is going to say, well, they're fantastic. All right. Whereas the previous one will dish out all of the situations or details.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Is that helpful?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That is a pretty good answer. My next question, sort of the same thing, and you kind of touched on it already, but what are the steps that a renter should take?
First is communications. How quick is this particular housing provider as you're in when you're in the application steps? How fast do they actually communicate with you? Do they just like leave you hanging for a few days and then all of a sudden decide, oh yeah, actually I forgot. I'm gonna go talk to that applicant because that is going to be very telling in terms of how fast they'll respond to you when they are your landlord in the future. Okay.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then the second piece is you want to make sure that you also check their Facebook, their socials, to see what are they actually like. All right. Are they someone that is associated with certain affiliation groups that you're not really particularly interested in? It's like some of those could be very extreme, and then it could impact your values as a potential renter to them because they could be biased in terms of choosing to rent to you. Okay. And then the third side, I would say, is do ask certain questions that detail out how they handle your documents, privacy. Because if they're just like, okay, email me everything, which is what many people do right now, that means that your driver's license could be exposed to some other third party if their email gets hacked.
Yep.
So that is very critical. So what I would share with tenants is, or applicants is ch- ask a few more questions. And it may be what they're using is actually a third party system that is compliant with all these data handling tips or guidelines. And then you'll be submitting documents through there and verifying your personal ID through there instead of sending it through email as an attachment. So be very careful.
Yep. I was gonna say I am always cautious whenever it's email. Whenever I have to send any personal stuff via email, it's always one of those things that sets off the red flag. It's just it. I always wonder, there's got to be a better way that this other person knows how to do this. There's no way it's just email.
Yeah, but that's the hard part, Sam, because there are so many small housing providers out there and they don't know about all these other tools or they don't want to spend money on these tools. So then they're just going the old school way where it's like, oh, text it to me, email it to me, drop it in this folder, which is like, I guess a little bit better, but you really want to make sure that people are handling your data properly because so many scams out there right now, like people fabricating your identity and they could take out mortgages, loans, run your credit history. It's like you don't want to do that because that hurts you negatively as a
Yep.
individual. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Every month, Openroom submits the owed rental debt to Equifax. Could you explain how this collaboration works and its benefits to the community?
Yes, this is really interesting because how we started was from unpaid rent situation. So we cared very deeply about individuals that do not pay rent because they are what's called the debtor in the situation. They owe debt to the creditor, which is the landlord. And in the future, we're going to do it the other way around when the tenants, when the landlords owe the tenant side. But for right now, what I'll explain is how it works from a landlord going after the tenant for unpaid rent. So how this works is that when there is a court order, there are court orders that are specific to unpaid rent and there will be details inside of it that says, okay, they owe this amount of money, this interest rate, these are the extra days that they stay, so they have to pay per day rates, but all of that financial detail is in that court order. What we do at Openroom is we then have an individual upload it into Openroom and then we extract the information from those documents and we process and calculate how much is owed plus the interest every single day that is not paid. And then we batch all of that and then we send information to Equifax so that it lands on the debtor or the tenant's credit history. And then it impacts the score negatively. But how it
Okay.
impacts the community is that once you pull a person's report, because earlier I was talking about the landlord should always pull their own reports on the tenant if they're considering somebody. So then it'll actually show up as a collections line item on that person's credit history. So then people know this individual didn't pay rent, they owe XYZ person.
Okay, and that's how you sort of like create this ecosystem that I sort of mentioned earlier, where everyone has access to all this information. It's literally just a search away. You can find your own information, you can find other people's information, and then because you guys are collecting it, you're just growing it more and more and more.
Right. What we're trying to do at Open Room, the future is towards that transparency in the rental ecosystem. How do you get to transparency? Is that we have to weed out the bad players of both the tenant side and the landlord side, right? It's not just about the bad players on one side. It is both sides have bad players because bad players are hurting the really good individuals, tenants and landlords that are in the ecosystem.
Okay, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the problems you've seen with using websites like Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace to find renters?
Oh, the scams that are out there. They're getting very
Yep.
sophisticated. Yeah, one of the main points is the fact that many people who claim to be landlords are not landlords, as you and I had talked about before, is that they don't get ID'd. There's no verification. Their listing just goes up. In this case of a Kijiji or a Facebook Marketplace, it's like there's no verification, and that's very, very dangerous. We have seen people who have definitely given deposits, like tenants who have given deposits and then waited for move-in day, and then all of a sudden it's like, actually, this is not your home. There's somebody else living in here, and you gave money to who knows who, right?
Yeah, and then some people that's gone. They do not know how to get that back.
No, once it is sent off, it is gone. It is really, really unfortunate. So you don't want to send any money without seeing the property yourself in person and verifying that that individual is actually the landlord on file.
Yeah.
Can I actually share a tip with your listeners on how to do that? If you have a real estate agent friend, okay, what they
Okay.
could do is use a tool called Geo Warehouse, which is owned by Terranet. It's a very, very big company, and you can search if that rental address is owned by that particular landlord because that name will be on the file of that property. So those are some of the like really in-depth tips to
Okay, that was
check.
Geo Warehouse, you said?
Yeah, Geo Warehouse.
Okay, awesome. Then so anyone listening, make sure to check that out then.
Yeah, but not everybody has access to it. So you'll need someone who is affiliated with Geo Warehouse, which could be a real estate agent, because all of them and their brokerages have access to it. So it's like, but I mean, almost everybody knows somebody who's a real estate agent that can
That's
check,
true.
right? Yeah, yeah.
So, travel nurse houses allows renting exclusively for travel professionals in hopes of removing unreliable renters from the equation. Do you think that people have more reason to trust these renters, or do you think it's just about the same?
I think that's fantastic. I think that there are more reasons to trust the renters who are specifically travel nurses because there are very specific contract details that are inside the nurses' initiative that they're trying to go to the other place, and then there's a specific time frame. This is what they're going to be doing there, and then that's it. They're not trying to go to the other place to live very, very long, and then you don't know what else is there. Plus there is a almost like a guarantor in place, which is the company, plus even your platform that has a very specific niche catered to the nurses side. So there is like validation in terms of the type of demographic that you serve.
Yeah, and then they're also, like you said, the company, the recruiters are also the people that, on top of us, verify, make sure that these nurses are actually trustworthy, and then they also handle any problems that may arise. So I feel,
Yes.
especially with travel nurses, it's a safe way to do it.
Yes, absolutely.
We sort of talked about this a little bit, but what are other online resources that you recommend people check out to familiarize themselves with the process and laws of renting?
Oh, from it depends on how deep you want to go. And are we talking the renter side or the landlord side or maybe both sides?
We can do both sides. We can mix it up and see
Yeah.
a little bit of one, see a little bit on the other.
Okay. There are some more government official websites. So you could look at, like from a provincial side, landlord and tenant board, or the very specific tribunal branches. They have all sorts of kinds of documents that would lay out the rental rules. Okay. So, say, for example, Ontario, there would be a document called the Residential Tenancies Act. Act. And that details out how laws should, or how rental laws should be transacting inside Ontario specifics. Okay. And then every province has their own. And then each province has their own tribunal board that looks after everything, and they've got details there. And then, if you really want to look at some other free non-legalese content, there could be, say, landlord side, there's landlord self-help. That is also funded by legal aid. There are also different associations or organizations that represent the tenant side that pump out lots of great content out there. Caution on certain types of groups that might give out content that is not appropriate, such as like how to get away with unpaid rent. So don't
Yeah.
don't do that, right? Because that's not good. And then there's also Open Room where we actually teach and educate. There's lots of free videos that I pump out into Instagram, for example. Open Room HQ, where you can at Open Room HQ, where you can search about us and just like watch fun educational videos that I share. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did actually. I saw some of the Instagram videos, and I can confirm for everyone that I have learned more from those videos than anything in school related on this subject. Anything more in my daily life have I learned through these Instagram videos.
Wait, you went to school and they taught you rental laws?
A
That's
little
awesome.
bit, and I had economics. Wasn't very good at it, but I had it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's I teach people now, Sam. It's because I felt like I was super uninformed and super uneducated about the rental ecosystem. And then it's because of that and my pain of going through my own tenancy dispute that I then spent thousands of hours diving into this content, right? This education for myself. But then what I said is I can't just keep all of this to myself. It's when I learn, I share with everybody else. So now I write a newsletter that is read by what, 16,000 people since I started it last year, which was pretty fantastic. Where I'm just like educating about politics right now is a big topic because politics has everything to do with housing, right? And then I also talk about like credit history. I talk about the evolution of British Columbia's laws and then how it impacts Ontario and vice versa. So those are some of the fun things. As I learn, everybody else learns with me.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
So, coming up towards the end here. So, what are some of the most baffling and unnerving stories you've come across so far? Just the ones that really seem like unreal, can't be true, but you've seen it, you've heard it, like all that.
Okay, I'll share two very quick ones. First one is I have spoken to a housing provider who had a great condo penthouse. Okay. Uh,
Okay.
Pretty expensive rent. He rented it out to an individual who used it as a OnlyFans studio. And not only that,
Okay.
it's like, yes, you can certainly do as you need to, no judgment, but you got to pay rent. And this individual had the audacity to use it as an OnlyFans studio, but then also didn't pay rent. And it was like several months, racked up over $50,000 of unpaid rent, and then got to eviction at the end of the day. And this wasn't even their first time. This was like their third time. So that's
Wow.
not okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then one other one when it comes to short-term rentals, because that's what the travel nurses do, right? So, not saying that this is your demographic, please, right? But on a very well-known platform, as you will know, I'm sure all the listeners know, Airbnb. So this individual had rented out several condo units in a very like small area, downtown core Toronto, and they had rented it out, didn't pay rent, but they rented all of those units on the short-term rental platform. And so they're making money while they're not paying money to the landlord side. Yeah, so
Hmm.
that is some of the outrageous situations that I have seen. It's just like, how is this possible that people can get away with this? But that's the reality of it, Sam. In the way that the laws are structured today, is that people can get away with it, and that is not okay. And that's part of what Open Room is trying to do is like plug in those loopholes so that we can bring the confidence back from small landlords and small housing providers, bring out their confidence, bring out their properties for rental, because those are some of the most affordable rental units. And so when we talk about housing crisis right now, Well,
Yep.
yeah, landlords are so scared. They're taking their most affordable units off. So then you have like the sky high type of rents that are going out right now because people are trying to cover their butts, right?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
hurts the great renters out there. And that's not okay. So we need to do more on this front to plug the
Yeah.
holes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And with that, we have one last question. Are there any important tips or pieces of advice that you'd want to share as someone who's been a pillar in the rental industry for so long, started Open Room? Do you have anything to say? Just any tips, anything.
I'd say the most important part to either the renter side or the housing provider side is to learn. Listen to podcasts like this, read content that is out there, follow some newsletters, because the worst thing is when you're uninformed and when you get taken advantage of. You have to know your rights and be able to exercise them in a proper manner so that it benefits you. A lot of people then look at it, it's like, okay, well, when you don't know the rights, then you think you know the rights, and then you end up in a situation where it could really detrimentally hurt you. Okay. And so we won't dive too further into that, but it's like, know more, learn more. It never hurts. Knowledge is power, as we said at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And especially when learning is so easy to do nowadays with like a phone or a computer pretty much at everyone's hand. I feel like like just 5 minutes every day, not even just whenever you're curious to educate yourself really is like the key to success on these types of things.
Absolutely.
All right. And with that, we'll end things off for the day. Thanks again, Weeding, for being on the show.
You're very welcome, Sam. Always a pleasure and so much appreciated for bringing me on this podcast.
I appreciate you being on. I really do. And for all my listeners, please be sure to check out Open Room. I touched on this last time, but it's only with your help that these types of resources can just continue to grow and help people. So really make sure to support it and check it out. And please, really do.
Yeah. Openroom.ca.
.ca, exactly. And so I've been Sam. This has been Traveler's Haven, and I wish you safe travels.